Hello, everybody, and welcome to this first episode of this podcast type, video cast type. I don't even know what it is. I really don't. I've kind of got a little bit of an idea as to what to call it, but I'm open to suggestions. I kind of have the idea of like creativity in progress, creatives in progress. I want something that is going to be like kind of like work in progress, but with a creative element to it, because obviously the phrase work in progress is something that a lot of us creatives can relate to, and we often use it on our social media for when we're showing pieces of work we're working on. And at the same time, it obviously is very apt for the podcast here, or the video cast or whatever this is, because again, we are all works in progress. And one of my lovely followers actually suggested that name to me, and I absolutely love it. I just wonder whether we can kind of put a creative spin on it. Anyway, so let me know what you guys think. So I just want to start off by saying thank you so much to everyone who has given this new venture just the most overwhelming amount of support. I was so nervous, and I still am incredibly nervous, and it's probably going to take me a little bit of time to kind of get used to this whole setup and actually what we're doing here, and get used to who my audience is and speaking to you guys, and yeah, so just bear with me because I am incredibly nervous still, but obviously the more I do this, the easier it will get. But yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone's just incredible support. I've honestly been so blown away, and I'm just very grateful that you're here and you're listening and you're trusting me to kind of help you with your own creative journeys. And in turn, I think this is going to be a very healing thing for me to do as well. So with that being said, I've been feeling kind of a little bit overwhelmed as to where to start, because there are so many topics and so many ideas I want to talk about and so many things I want to kind of discuss, and it's scary. It really is scary kind of knowing where to begin with something like this. There's so many things that have happened over my artistic journey, and also growing up, that have kind of crafted me into the person I am today. And there are lots of lessons and bits of advice and things like that I want to give you, but actually condensing it into like content is really quite overwhelming and quite difficult, which is why I was really interested in doing this longer form content, and kind of sharing more of my story and things that I've learned. And I guess the premise behind this is, by sharing my story, I'm kind of hoping that someone else will see themselves through my journey, or in me maybe a little bit, and it will kind of give them a bit of encouragement and some help as to pursue their creative dreams. So yeah, in time obviously I will get more comfortable with this whole setup, but right now I feel very uncomfortable. But I'm gonna start, I think, by just something that I get asked a lot, which is kind of what led me to this career, or how to become a full-time artist, which is something I get asked a lot, and kind of what this journey and this artistic creative journey means to me, and that is a very broad subject and very broad topic, and something that I don't really know where to begin. And obviously you've got to bear in mind that everyone's journey and everyone's lives are very different. So if I just share my story, maybe you can take something, or a little tidbit, or maybe a bit of advice or a bit of encouragement from this. So if you know anything about me, you might know that I am a coloured pencil artist who has been doing this now full time for about 7 years. But growing up, I definitely didn't even think this was a career path. It wasn't really something that was ever on my radar, being completely honest. I was always incredibly creative, and I always loved doing creative things, but doing something like this definitely wasn't something that I ever considered. And I kind of fell into this job, which I say, and I know a lot of people might look at my work and say, but you're naturally talented or you're so gifted. And again, that's a topic I kind of want to discuss in a different episode, because I truly don't think that you have to be naturally talented to become an artist. And I don't believe that I have natural talent. I think my job, my skill set has been crafted over many years of mental health and anxiety and being afraid to put myself in different situations, and it's kind of it's forced me down a route of calmness, which is obviously what art gives me. But as I said, it's definitely going to be a subject for a different episode, because that's a lot. That's a very, very broad, big subject. So I come from a very corporate background. My parents very, very corporate people. My mum works for a firm of accountants. She used to. They're both now retired, but she used to work for a firm of accountants doing marketing, and she was head of management of their marketing. And my dad was a naval officer for most of his career, and then again went into the kind of civilian side of the job that he was doing for the Navy. So very, very regimented, very structured, very risk averse. And I think the idea to them of having a daughter who was somewhat creative growing up, it wasn't really encouraged, not career-wise anyway. And I really, really struggled academically. I was fine at school. When I was actually at school, I was fine. I was in and out of secondary school a lot because I was in hospital, struggling and suffering from epilepsy. And that's, again, I'm not really going to go into that at the moment because, again, very, very uncomfortable, raw subject of bullying and school life. I don't tend to dwell too much on that time of my life because it is very, very uncomfortable, but I think at some point it will be important for us to kind of discuss. But I wasn't massively academic, and I went to college because that's what everyone else was doing, and I actually landed myself a job when I was at college, a couple of jobs, and I started working for a car garage or a car dealership. I was sort of doing after sales and some marketing for them. That kind of ignited my passion for work, and when I had a couple of bad experiences when I was at work working in different dealerships and different garages, and I felt like I had kind of hit a bit of a brick wall with not wanting to go to college because obviously I was earning money at the time, and that as a 17-year-old was very, very appealing because I wanted to buy a car and do everything like that. So I decided that college wasn't for me. So, and I'm the sort of person that I either give something 100% or I don't at all, and my head's either in it or it's not. So for me, when I was working in the motor trade, and I wasn't really attending college, obviously, therefore I didn't get any A-levels, and my parents were quite, I wouldn't say they were disappointed, but they were a bit surprised and a bit like, well, what's she going to do with her life? And so I went off to night school to study marketing when I was still working in the motor trade, and then I felt, because I hadn't got any qualifications, a lot of my friends were going off to university, I felt like I was missing out massively, so I applied last minute to go to uni, and they took me on my work experience because, as I said, I had absolutely zero qualifications at this point, apart from a sort of night school marketing certificate, and I went to a local uni to study, again, marketing because it's something that made sense to me, creativity, and applying it to business. Like, again, I didn't think art was a career path. I had dabbled in a bit of commission work when I was about 16, 17 for friends and family, but again, it wasn't really something that was massively encouraged from my parents. So I lasted a year and a half studying marketing at uni before I realised that I was failing and I was getting myself in a huge amount of debt, and I didn't want to kind of pursue something that wasn't going to land me a job at the end, because I was, in my mind, I was going to leave uni and just have a crippling amount of debt, not have the academic qualification to get a good job, and I was really, really despondent. I remember sitting down with my parents and sort of saying to them, I don't want to go back to uni, I want to drop out. And again, I was 20, I think, at this point. I'm feeling incredibly lost. I had absolutely zero qualifications. I was a uni dropout. I was in £20,000 worth of debt, and from uni, and it was quite a difficult time because I felt like I was getting left behind. A lot of my friends and people around me were really academic and were really kind of flying through their degrees and becoming doctors, or going down different paths, and I was felt completely left behind. And growing up, I'd always felt incredibly average. Whether that was, academically, I was not a bad student, but I wasn't remarkably clever. And again, that really, really showed when I was at uni and at college. I felt very average socially. I found it quite difficult to maintain friends. I wasn't popular at school. I was very understated, and I think that again left me feeling like I didn't really have that much of a voice. I remember picking subjects at school that I thought would make me look cool, such as PE, even though that wasn't a thing that I really wanted to do, and I really did want to study art. But again, I got to college and I did study art, but because I wasn't doing the sort of work that they wanted me to do, i.e. abstract, and all I wanted to do was draw, they failed me. So again, super despondent and towards sort of being creative. And adding to that, I was incredibly bullied at school, which again, as I said, due to the epilepsy and various other things. And it's sad when I think back at that point of my life, because it was really, it was a tough time. Anyway, drawing was something that I'd love to do, and as a girl, was always something I'd gone back to as a child. I remember being on holiday and my parents would give me and my brother journals, and we'd have to sort of write about what we'd been up to that day, and then I'd always draw pictures at the end of mine, and I was always super creative. But I guess I had always drawn, but again, it wasn't something that was ever on my career radar. But when I dropped out of uni, I kind of had a huge amount of anxiety around failing, and I was then 21 with a huge amount of pressure because, as I said, all my friends were getting proper jobs, and I was a uni student dropout with no qualifications, a huge amount of debt, and really just not having a clue what to do and where to turn. And I guess my mum would always say to me, you're so employable, you have got a few qualifications, you went to night school and you've got loads of work experience, and you'll always get another job based on your work experience. It's not always about academia. But I had a huge amount of anxiety about going into the workplace and being surrounded by people, because I felt like I'd never fit into anything before, and I didn't know that was, I definitely didn't want to go back to work. I knew that, not to work for anyone else, and it just crippled me with anxiety, the idea of that. And the workplace was just so daunting, and I was scared of feeling like I failed, and I failed myself, I failed my family, I failed my parents. I just had crippling anxiety about 2021 to the point where a lot of the time I just couldn't leave the house. And as I sort of have touched on, growing up, my parents were supportive, but they weren't big with praise, or and they still aren't now. They are very, very supportive of what I do, but they're not they will find not fault, but they're massively risk averse. So I can go to them with a new idea and they won't ever say, oh, that's great. Or it's very, very rare that they say, oh, that's great. They'll always come up with yeah, but have you considered this? Or what if this happens? And again, that makes it a little bit difficult. But to be honest, I'm the sort of person that now thrives when people tell me I can't do something, that I won't do something, because it gives me a bit of a kick and it gives me a bit of encouragement to go out and sort of pursue things a little bit further. But because of the way that my parents have, and the way that I'd sort of been treated at school and the way that I'd treated myself, I had very little self-esteem and self-worth, and I definitely didn't feel like I was good enough. I felt like I was failing and I didn't know what on earth I was going to do. And these feelings and anxieties led me down various different paths, and some of which aren't subjects and things that I'm going to talk about on this, because I'm going to keep some of it sort of private and personal, but ultimately the only thing that ever made me feel really settled was drawing and being creative. But at the time I didn't even think it was possible to become a full-time artist. I then started doing some commission work for friends and family, drawing people's horses. I grew up riding a lot and riding other people's horses, and had horses on loan, and I started drawing and doing that kind of thing for them. But I was charging very, very little, and I was charging about £30-40 at the time, and I kind of gave myself a year when I dropped out of university to try and make it work. I deferred my place, so I still had a place at uni, but I'd kind of asked for a gap year, so to speak, so I could kind of try and create something from my artistic work. I wouldn't say I was very good at it back then. I definitely forced myself to sit and draw a lot of the time, just because I didn't force myself to sit and draw. It was something that really did calm me down, but I forced myself to kind of become habits. It became a habit. Is it a habit? I don't even know whether it's habitual at that point, whether that's the right phrase for it. But yeah, so I started doing commission work, but at the same time I was working part-time in a pub, which was a job that I'd had when I had been at uni as well, just to supplement obviously bills. And I was obviously fortunate that I was still living with my parents at the time, but I kind of just had an idea that I knew that drawing settled me, and if I could make it work as a career, then that'd be great, but I didn't have a clue how that was going to look for me at the time. So from then, my dad, after doing it for a couple of months, my dad sat me down and had a conversation about money, and whether had I sort of explored other options with my creative path, and whether I could offer prints or something like that, and as a way to earn a little bit more cash and a little bit more money from the work that I was putting out there. And to cut a very long story short, I found a local company who weren't exactly honest or loyal. Well, not loyal, it's the wrong word, but they weren't exactly the best people for me to work with. And I was incredibly naive, and I was fortunate enough to have some inheritance from my granddad passed away, and that was always in a bank account ready for either my first house purchase or something, something that I wanted to do business-wise maybe, but it wasn't to be squandered. It wasn't to be sort of thrown away. It was left to his 4 grandchildren as something for them to do to sort of elevate their future or push them further forward. But so I had a little bit of money, and this company, as I said, I'm not going to go too much into it on today's episode, but they lied to me about the pricing. They were lying is probably quite a strong word to use. They weren't exactly honest about their pricing. They knew that how old I was, and as I said, I didn't have any business acumen. I didn't know about VAT or tax or anything like that. So they were missing out prices. They didn't give me clear costing. They added a VAT to things that I didn't even know that they were a VAT or VAT limited company. The invoices started coming through, and they were thousands of pounds. So basically what had happened was I'd gone to them saying I really wanted to be an equestrian artist and this was some of my work, and they were very, very encouraging, and they had told me that they had a platform that they used. They had a lot of big artists. They could be very, very they were very good with their marketing. They had a team, they had this, they had that, they had a website for artists. They sold me the dream. He told me that I needed to create a big portfolio of work, and that about 18 pieces would work, and we could do all these prints, and I shouldn't do a soft launch. I should, really keep it under wraps and give people little teasers, and then across social media, build a website, all the rest of it, and then do a hard launch and surprise everyone. And again, I look back at that now knowing what I know, and I'm just like, how could I have been so stupid? But I was. And cutting a very long story short, the invoices started coming through when this guy was printing all of these prints, and he'd added various different costs that he hadn't told me about to begin with. And obviously at this point I had the prints in hand, and I was just receiving invoices for thousands of pounds worth of prints, and it was all of my granddad's inheritance money that went on those prints. And it was over £10,000 worth, and I did the hard launch that the guy had suggested. I did it on social media. I did it on Facebook, because Instagram back then wasn't really a thing, and I sold nothing, absolutely nothing. And it was the hardest part of my life, because I was a uni dropout. I had no qualifications. I was in so much debt to the uni. I had squandered and failed. I felt like I failed. I just felt like it was such a hard, horrible time to spend. I'd wasted my granddad's hard-earned money, and that was a really, really difficult thing for me to kind of have in the back of my head. I felt like I'd failed my parents. I felt like I'd failed myself. I was so naive. I had this inner bully that was tormenting me all the time. It was a really, really dark time, and I don't know. I think back to that time, and I couldn't work, and I was still obviously working at the pub, but I was earning minimum wage, and I was now 22, 23, and again feeling like I'd failed massively. I didn't want to go back to uni and potentially fail there and be in even more debt. I had thousands of pounds worth of stock that I didn't have a clue how I was going to shift. I couldn't afford to go to any shows. I had absolutely no income, really, apart from the pub. I was in a bit of commission work. I was charging about £100 for a commission. Again, not enough to make it work full time. I had no money to shift any of the stock, to do any marketing. I had all my friends were beginning to graduate and go and get proper good jobs. And even at that point, my parents had just suggested to go and get I use this quote, but proper job. And I was just completely despondent, to the point where I wasn't leaving the house. It was an incredibly dark time. And yeah, I think at that age you have so much pressure on you, and you don't know what you're going to do with your life, and it was a really, really difficult time. And I was lucky enough to start working full time at the pub, and I think at that point I didn't pick up a pencil for about 4 months, and my mum actually, I think she booked me an appointment at the doctor's, and the doctor put me on antidepressants just so I could begin to function a little bit more normally. Again, that's another subject for another day, but I was on them for about 2 years, and they did numb me enough to start to draw again a few months later. I don't sort of agree with what happened at that point in my life, but I did manage to pick up a pencil a few months later, and I started to research other artists, because again, it was at a time when there wasn't really that much on social media, and there wasn't that many pencil artists out there that I could admire, or I could learn how their skills, so it was all very, very trial and error. But I started to research different materials and different pencils, and I used the money that I was earning from the pub to invest and get the at the time Fabriano Artistico hot press watercolour paper and some polychromos pencils and some luminance pencils, and just invested in a little bit of art materials. And I just started to draw with absolutely no pressure, because the thing that calmed me down was drawing. And as soon as I felt well enough through the antidepressants to start drawing again, then that's what I did. And at the time it was we just had, I think it was the Rio 2016 Olympics, and obviously Charlotte Dujardin and Vallegro had just got gold in the dressage and were broken every world record. And I started drawing Vallegro off the back of that. I found a photographer that would let me use his work, and I started drawing. And I, at the time, was posting very sporadically on Facebook, and like it was, I was drawing it just for myself, just because I wanted to push myself and just see with no pressure what I could create. And I put half of the drawing online, and Charlotte saw it and she sent me a message. And I remember sitting there in my bedroom on my bed on a Sunday night, and I got this message through from Charlotte, and it was the most mind-blowing thing, that the power of social media. I think I realized at that point that social media was so powerful, and I was so incredibly grateful that she had seen my work and that she liked it enough to invite me to go and meet her, Carl, and the horses. And from there I did release a limited collection of prints through Charlotte. I did some charity work with her, and I did sell all those prints because she endorsed them and she backed them, and I'll forever be incredibly grateful for her for helping me get out of a very, very dark time in my life. And therefore, like, selling those prints, it did give me a little bit of money to kind of reinvest and boost my confidence a little bit. And those were before that really, really dark days. And it's crazy that it was only about 7 years ago. And I think most people who have followed my journey will think that that was quite a turning point, working with someone like that. Unfortunately, as much as it really, really was, it didn't really have a long-lasting impact. And there were certain different things that happened that it didn't really have the desired result, or I was still very, very lost at that point. I was still struggling with like pricing my commission work. I obviously still had all that stock still sat there, and it was, I would like to say that changed everything, but in some aspects it did, because I'll be very, very grateful, and I cannot ever deny how incredible it was to have the experience of working with Team GB, the dressage team at that time, and it did really rocket my confidence. But again, behind the scenes, I was in a crippling amount of anxiety, and still had all the uni debt. I still really didn't have a business at all. I didn't even know whether it was possible. I had, a lot going on. Anyway, that's when I'm gonna leave that side of the story, and that's where I'm going to leave the first chapter almost, and just talk a little bit about what I learned during that time. I hope that it will give someone else some hope or encouragement if you are in a little bit of a darker place. So I have learned over the years that drawing is something I physically need to do. If I don't draw for about 3 or 4 days, I feel it. I get really anxious, I feel really on edge. And it's crazy, because I think a lot of the times we can see other people's lives on social media and think that they have it all sorted, and they don't necessarily struggle with mental health, or they don't have anxiety. And how can someone who has got their lives together, on Instagram, have crippling anxiety? But I think that's what kind of, again, why I want to share more of my journey, share more of my story with you all. And drawing give me such a stillness and a calmness that I can't get from anything or anyone else. And I think without finding art, I honestly don't know where I would be today. And that's a very dark kind of thing to say, but it has honestly saved my life and changed my life for the better. But I physically need to draw to keep me sane, I think. And I know that I still have battles in my own head, and I still have demons very much that like haunt me a lot of the time, to do with myself and my past. And I'll be the first one to say that I've been in and out of therapy since the age of 9, and I've been consistently in therapy now for the past 18 months, and it has helped me navigate myself and my mind and my head a lot better. But I still have very much demons that I battle all the time, and again, will forever be grateful for the work that I'm able to do. And I still have very much my inner bully and my self-critic of feelings that I'm not good enough, and that who am I to want to do my work, and who's going to listen to this, and who's going to understand my story, and who, the feelings that people are going to judge my story, or I'm putting myself out there, and everyone's going to think I'm dramatic, or I'm being this, or I'm being that. And this is the reason why it's taken me years to be able to sit here and share more of myself. But maybe you're like me and you need to draw or be creative for your own mental space. And I think what I kind of want to say is that everyone's journeys and everyone's stories are so different, and there's no blueprint to being a creative or to how to make it as an artist. But I think what I do want to say is that no one has overnight success, and it's hard when you see people online who are sharing their transformations, whether it's in the creative world or maybe in other aspects of life, or whether it's financially or in fitness or whatever. Or you see people and they show their drawing sort of differences in a matter of months, and you think, how on earth have they done that? Or someone who started a creative business and has already had a sellout print run, and it's easy to feel really, really despondent when you see things online. And that's just why it's so important just to follow your own path and actually stay true to yourself. And you kind of have to allow yourself to fail and not be afraid to fail. I have failed more times than I care to tell you, and I can't begin to tell you the amount of this wild roller coaster of a journey that I've been on for the past few years. It's been crazy. It's been really, really crazy. And I think now I've learned to welcome failure as a chance to learn and to grow, and to also know that let me start that again. And also know that it's okay not to have it all figured out, and that no one has all the answers, and anything is possible with grit and determination. Like anything. As humans, we are so capable of so much, and you've just got to find your purpose and find your passion and find the thing that really makes you feel alive and makes you feel calm, and follow those dreams. And again, there are so many topics and so many subjects I want to talk about from here, about other people's impact on you, and how you can't let anyone else dictate your journey. This is your personal journey, and you've got to do the things that make you happy. At the end of the day, we're here for one time and one life, and you've just got to make it work. And every day is an opportunity to learn, and every day is an opportunity to grow, and you've just got to put yourself out there and not be afraid. And I know that's easier said than done, and I know how difficult it can be when you're facing that black dog and the inner demons. But Christ, if you can just realise how powerful you are, and realise what an impact you have on other people, I think that is the true beauty. And if you can find purpose and passion in something you love, then that will give you the grit and determination to keep going, even on days when you don't feel like it. You've got to remember that success as well is never ever linear. It's never one straight road. It's never something that everyone sort of has the same journey. Everyone's success and everyone's idea of success is so different. And our failures shouldn't define who we are. And I know it can be so hard, as I said, to look online and see other people's success and think what they have, or what they've done maybe. How do they do that? How can I do that? I want to be more like that person. And that's great to have inspiration. It's great to have passion, but you need to realize actually who you are and how capable you are as your own individual person, because we're all so unique. And that's what makes us so beautiful as humans, is how unique we are and how much we can just impact each other's lives and impact our own lives by just staying true to who we are and what we're passionate about. But I guess if you can find something that makes you feel whole and still, and all the craziness we're currently in, and the world of social media and all this sort of like external noise, just focus on that and try and build healthy habits around that. And that doesn't just mean drawing or being a creative. That can be with anything, whether you're passionate about, you know, fitness or nutrition, or, you know, whatever career path you want to go down. If you can build healthy habits around that, and stay true to actually your purpose, and not let your inner bully or other people have a negative impact on you, and listen to the external noise. It's just about finding ways of staying true to yourself, because as I said, it's so easy to see other people's journeys online and compare, but that's not reality. You don't actually know the stories they've been through, and you don't know what they are currently going through, and the only thing you do know is actually what's in your own head, and who you are. So you got to stay true to that. For me, it's more about the emotion art brings to me. I don't have a grand plan or where I want to be, or I don't have any massive goals. For me, I am very, very just grateful that I can sit in my home, in my safe space, and do something that brings me calmness and brings me stillness. And I have a very controlled and very calm life. And I use the word controlled because there are certain things that give me a lot of anxiety, and I try to limit that, which arguably has somewhat made me a little bit of a recluse. I find it really difficult to do certain things, and again, that's another thing that I will talk about in another episode. But my goal, I think, is to just be happy and to do what I love and what brings me calmness. So I guess my biggest starting point for anyone who is listening, who just knows they want to do something but doesn't know how to start, is just take the pressure off. Please, just take the pressure off. It was when I took the pressure off myself back then, all the way years and years and years ago, when I was in the very, very dark place. It was when I took the pressure off and I sort of caved and went and worked full time at the pub, that I invested. And I did have a bit of a pivotal moment where my work got spotted online, but that's only when I took the pressure off. There is no such thing as an overnight success, as I said, and if you have something you're passionate about, then that is the biggest starting place. Find something you truly love, and think back to when you were a child. Maybe, like, what did you used to enjoy when you were a child? Is there something that you can incorporate more of that into your daily life, to be fun and be silly and to just have passion? And just, I think it's so easy to get bogged down with society and different, like, just external noise. So if you can find something that you used to love as a child, and as my therapist is teaching me about my inner child and connecting back to her and what did she used to enjoy, and knowing that, you know, am I making her proud, and am I doing things that would make her happy, and you know, whether that's going out in nature or going for a walk or anywhere. I'm rambling, but I think, yeah, that is the biggest starting place. And like with all these things, like, everything's got to be about balance, and you've got to kind of, I know I can obviously sit here in a very somewhat privileged position where I am now. I have built a business to a place where I can financially support myself and my life doing what I love, and obviously arguably back then I was working still, and I was still living with my parents, so I don't really have the responsibility of a mortgage or bills. But I think if you are passionate about starting a creative journey and starting something, then you kind of just try and put in healthy habits and habits in place to begin to start that journey, whether it's being a little bit creative for an hour in the evening when you could be watching, or you usually watch TV, putting yourself online, speaking to people about something you're passionate about, or, you know, whatever it is. How can you get there? Like, what would you like your ideal life to look like? And just try. I think there's no failure in trying. try and do something that you're passionate about and something that's going to bring you happiness, because as I said, we're here for one life and we've only got one shot. And I think that's that's something I've definitely learned, is you kind of just got to embrace the process and trust the process. And it's not always about the end goal, it's about having fun along the way and actually enjoying the creative process. I think the other thing that I would say is you've got to feel comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's the times that you don't feel comfortable, that's when you learn the most about yourself. It was the times when I have been up against a wall and I had been in the darkest of places, that I've really realised, okay, it's now or never. Like, I really need that. I know I can't go back to work, and I know that I don't want to go and work for anyone else. I know that I don't actually think I'm employable. I'm very stubborn. I've got a lot of character traits from, various different things that have happened in my past, and I just don't think I'd be good for working for anyone else. And how on earth am I going to make this work for me? And again, so many subjects here and so many topics that I will continue to talk about and discuss after I've sort of told more of my story. And there are so many tidbits and so many bits of advice and so many deep dives that I want to do into psychology and actually the way we are and the way our brains work. And I'm not academic and I'm not scientific at all, but I just know I want to talk about perfection paralysis and imposter syndrome, and actually doing things and putting yourself out there, and failure and success, and how to find passion and purpose. And there's so many things I want to talk about, because as humans we are honestly capable of so much. And if you just maybe try a little bit, you'll realise how capable you are, and capable of trying something different or putting yourself out there. And we're really cool. We are, as humans, really cool, and we are capable of so much. You've just got to kind of find your passion and find your purpose. But again, things that we can talk about another day, because my biggest bit of advice is, please, just whatever happens, don't give up. If I'd have given up, that's such bad English, if I'd have given up when I felt like I wanted to give up, then I don't honestly know what my life would look like. And I'd just be forever grateful for my inner stubbornness that continued to drive me. And people telling me that I can't do something has always been the biggest driver for me. People telling me, you can't be a full-time artist, go and get a proper job. There's no such thing as being successful or being a successful artist, or no. So yeah, or anyone who's ever given me any sort of doubt, thank you, because you've made this journey a lot easier for me. And as much as at the time it might have seemed really difficult, and I might have had a bit of a tantrum, had a bit of a cry about it, I'll be forever grateful for everyone who's doubted me, because it's in those moments of doubt, and it's when people don't think you can do something, that for me it's made me a lot more resilient, and it's made me a lot more determined to prove myself, and actually stand on my own 2 feet and say, no, do you know what, I am capable and I can do this. So I hope that's been a little bit inspirational, maybe a little bit motivational, a little bit of clarity as to my background, maybe, or maybe hopefully you've seen maybe a little bit of your own journey in this. Again, very grateful that you're allowing me the space to express my story and tell my story and tell the journey I've been on. I am open to all kinds of feedback. I'm open to the various different topics. If anyone has something they want to talk to me about, or in the comments, if there's subjects that you want me to discuss further. As I said, I don't have a plan for this. I don't have a plan for anything, is what I've said. I think I touched upon a bit earlier. I just know that this is something I'm really passionate about, is helping others with a creative journey. And if I can help you by sharing my story, then that is amazing. But yeah, I feel like I've rambled now for, it's been about 45 minutes. So I think that's enough for the first episode. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you so much for listening wherever you are in the world. And thank you for letting me be part of your own creative journey. I'm sending you all so much love and so much just warmth and light and everything, like all the positivity. I really hope you have a good day, whatever you're up to, wherever you are, and I will see you very, very soon. Take care, and as always, lots of love. Bye.